The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber opened with a deep hum. Ambassador Kang Dae-ho walked through them, his black diplomatic uniform crisp and formal. His footsteps echoed in the huge circular room. Around him, hundreds of alien beings sat in tall chairs that reached toward the dome ceiling. Dae-ho had walked this path many times before. For 3 years, he had come to this place to speak for humanity. For 3 years, he had tried to make peace with the alien races that controlled most of the galaxy. Today felt different. Today, something was going to change. The chamber was enormous. The walls curved up and up until they met at a point far above. Strange lights floated in the air, casting shadows that moved like living things. The smell was odd, too. A mix of different alien scents that humans could barely understand. Park Ji-woo, Dae-ho's young assistant, walked beside him. Ji-woo carried a small device that held all of humanity's hopes for this meeting. Inside were the plans for a new agreement. It was humanity's final offer for peace. The alien delegates watched them approach the center podium. Some had multiple eyes that blinked at different times. Others had skin that changed colors as they breathed. A few looked almost like humans. But their movements were too smooth, too perfect. At the highest seat sat Counselor Thexvar of the Velkari Empire. His species looked like tall, thin humans, but their skin was silver and their eyes were completely black. Thexvar had been the leader of the council for over 50 years. He did not like humans. Near him sat Silthara, who spoke for the Azurian collective. Her body was made of living crystal that caught the light and threw rainbow patterns on the walls. She was beautiful, but her voice was cold as winter ice. On the other side was Hive Mind Kex, the voice of the Zephyrite swarms. Kex looked like a giant insect with 4 arms and wings that never stopped moving. When Kex spoke, it was the voice of billions of creatures speaking as one. Dae-ho reached the podium and placed his hands on its smooth surface. The material felt warm and seemed to pulse with life. He looked up at the hundreds of alien faces staring down at him. "Honored delegates," Dae-ho began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "I come before you today with humanity's final proposal for peaceful cooperation." A sound like wind through leaves filled the room. It was the aliens talking to each other in their own languages. Some of the sounds hurt human ears. "We have prepared a comprehensive agreement," Dae-ho continued. He gestured to Ji-woo, who activated the device. Suddenly, the air above the podium filled with images and text. "This plan offers fair trade between all species. It provides for shared technology that will help everyone. It creates zones of space where all races can live in peace." The images showed star maps with new trade routes. They showed human colonies willing to share their resources. They showed research stations where aliens and humans could work together to solve the galaxy's problems. Thexvar leaned forward in his tall chair. "How generous of the primitive mammals," he said, his voice dripping with mockery. "You offer us what is already ours by right." Silthara's crystal body chimed like distant bells. "The younger races always think they have something to teach their elders," she said. "Humans have been in space for less than 2 centuries. We have ruled the stars for thousands of years." Hive Mind Kex's wings buzzed angrily. "The soft flesh speaks of peace while their colonies spread like a disease. They consume resources that belong to the true inheritors of the galaxy." Dae-ho felt his heart sink, but he kept his face calm. This was going exactly as he had feared it would. "With respect, counselors, Humanity asks for nothing more than the right to exist alongside you. We offer our knowledge, our labor, our friendship. Your friendship? Thexvar stood up from his chair. He was nearly 3 meters tall, and his silver skin gleamed under the floating lights. What could vermin offer to gods? The chamber erupted in alien laughter. It sounded like breaking glass, grinding metal, and dying animals all at once. Jiwoo stepped closer to Daeho, his face pale. For 3 years, Thexvar continued, we have allowed you to waste our time with these meetings. We have been patient with your ignorance, but patience has limits. He gestured with one long arm, and the images above the podium disappeared. In their place came new images. Human colonies surrounded by alien warships, trade vessels being turned. Away from alien ports, human families being forced from their homes on mixed worlds. The Velkari Empire has decided, Thexvar announced. Human expansion ends now. Your trade rights are revoked. Your colonies beyond the Sol system will be relocated. Silthera's crystal form sang a high, cold note. The Azurian Collective agrees. The medical technologies you seek will no longer be available to your species. Perhaps scarcity will teach you humility. Hive mind Kex's multiple voices joined together in a horrible harmony. The Zephyrite swarms demand compensation for the ecological damage your colonies have caused. You will surrender the worlds of New Jeju, Titan Base, and the Proxima settlements. Daeho felt the weight of 3 billion human lives on his shoulders. These weren't just political decisions, they were death sentences. Without alien medical technology, millions of humans would die from diseases that could be easily cured. Without the outer colonies, humanity would be trapped in their small corner of space forever. Counselors, Daeho said, his voice steady. Despite the fear in his chest, surely we can find a middle ground. Humanity has much to offer. Silence. Thexvar's voice boomed through the chamber. The time for human words is over. We call for the vote on the Human Containment Protocol. The floating lights in the chamber began to pulse in different colors. This was how the aliens voted. Each light represented a different species, and the color showed their choice. Red for yes, blue for no. One by one, the lights turned red. The Velkari, red. The Azurians, red. The Zephyrite, red. Species after species chose to lock humanity away like criminals. Jiwoo whispered the count to Daeho as the lights changed. 847 yes votes, he said, his voice barely audible. 3 no votes. Only 3 species in the entire galaxy thought humanity deserved to exist freely. 3 out of 850. The chamber fell silent. Thexvar looked down at Daeho with something that might have been pity if it hadn't been so cold. The Human Containment Protocol passes by overwhelming majority. Your species will return to your home system and remain there. Any attempt to expand beyond the designated boundaries will be met with force. Daeho stood perfectly still for a long moment. Around him, the alien delegates were already beginning to talk among themselves, as if humanity had already ceased to exist. To them, this was just another piece of business finished. Slowly, Daeho reached up and unpinned the golden badge from his uniform. It was the symbol of his office, the mark that showed he spoke for all of humanity. He had worn it with pride for 3 years. He placed the badge carefully on the podium. The small metallic sound it made seemed very loud in the huge chamber. The United Earth Federation, Daeho said, his voice carrying to every corner of the room. formally withdraws from the Galactic Council. The alien chatter stopped. Every eye, crystal, and sensor turned to look at him. We hereby terminate all diplomatic relations with the Galactic Council and its member species, Deho continued. Humanity will remember this day. He turned and walked toward the great doors, Jiwoo beside him. Behind them, the chamber exploded into sound. Alien voices raised in surprise, anger, and in some cases, what might have been fear. Thexvar's voice rose above the others. You cannot simply leave. The Council's authority extends to all civilized species. Deho didn't turn around. Then perhaps, he said without looking back, it's time you learned what uncivilized species can do. The doors closed behind them with a final, thunderous boom. The emergency meeting room deep beneath Seoul was buzzing with activity. President Han Soo-jin sat at the head of a long table, her fingers pressed together as she listened to the reports coming in from around the galaxy. The room's walls were covered with screens showing star maps, ship positions, and communication feeds from human colonies scattered across dozens of worlds. Operation Silent Exodus is proceeding on schedule, reported Admiral Lee Kyung-min, commander of the Earth Space Fleet. He was a tall man with gray hair and steady eyes that had seen too many battles. Our people are evacuating from alien territories faster than expected. Han Soo-jin nodded. She had hoped they would never need to use these emergency plans, but humanity had learned long ago to prepare for the worst. How many of our people are still in alien space? Approximately 2 million civilians and 50,000 military personnel, Lee answered. Captain Yoon Soo-jung is leading the evacuation from the Proxima Trade Hub. That's our biggest challenge. Over 500,000 humans work and live there. On one of the screens, they could see the trade hub floating in space like a metal city. It was huge, with spinning rings and towers that stretched for kilometers. Ships came and went like insects around a hive. Most of the galaxy's trade flowed through that one station. What about our diplomatic staff? Han asked. All recalled, said another voice. Dr. Kim Hye-jin stepped into the room, carrying a tablet full of data. She was the director of the Titan Research Facility and one of humanity's brightest scientists. Ambassador Deho and his team are already on their way home. But, Madam President, we need to talk about the other protocols. Han Soo-jin's expression grew serious. She knew what Kim meant. For the past 10 years, while humanity had been trying to make peace with the aliens, they had also been preparing for war. Not the kind of war the aliens expected, but something much more dangerous to them. The war of human ingenuity unleashed without limits. Show them, Han ordered. Kim activated her tablet, and the room's screens changed. Instead of star maps, they now showed technical drawings of ships, weapons, and devices that looked nothing like the crude human technology the aliens had seen before. Ladies and gentlemen, Kim said, meet the real human space fleet. The images showed sleek ships with hulls that seemed to bend light around them, weapons that fired energy beams capable of cutting through the thickest alien armor, engines that could move faster than anything the galaxy had ever seen. For 10 years, Kim continued, we've been showing the aliens exactly what they expected to see. Primitive human technology that was barely adequate for space travel. Meanwhile, our real research has been happening in complete secrecy. Admiral Lee leaned forward. The ships we've been using for diplomacy and trade are basically toys compared to what we've actually built. Every time an alien scientist examined our technology, we made sure they only saw the fake versions. One screen showed a comparison. On the left was a human cargo ship that the aliens knew about, slow, clumsy, with thick armor and simple weapons. On the right was what humans had actually built, a vessel that looked like it was carved from liquid shadow, bristling with technology that would make alien engineers weep with envy. "The Phantom Drive," Kim explained, pointing to the new ship's engine design. "It doesn't just move through normal space, it can slip between dimensions. Our ships can appear and disappear like ghosts." Another screen showed a different innovation. Adaptive AI systems that learn and evolve during combat. Command networks that can coordinate millions of units simultaneously. Weapons that adjust their frequency to penetrate any type of shield or armor. President Han looked around the room, at her advisors. These were the people who would have to lead humanity through what was coming. "Dr. Choi Minho, what's the status of Apollo?" A younger man stood up from the back of the room. Choi was barely 30 years old, but he had created something that might change the course of galactic history. "Apollo is fully operational, Madam President. The Quantum Intelligence Network is running simulations of every possible scenario. We know exactly how each alien species fights, what their weaknesses are, and how to exploit them. Apollo has been watching alien military exercises for years," Kim added. "It's analyzed their tactics, their ship designs, their communication protocols. We probably know their capabilities better than they do." The screens showed battle simulations, thousands of them, running simultaneously. In each one, human forces faced different alien fleets. In each one, the humans won. But Han Soo-jin wasn't satisfied with just military superiority. "What about the civilians? Are people living on alien worlds?" "That's where it gets interesting," Admiral Lee said with a slight smile. "Captain Yoon Soo-jung's evacuation from the Proxima trade hub isn't just a rescue mission. It's also an intelligence operation. On the main screen, they could see Captain Yoon's ship approaching the massive trading station. It looked like any other human cargo vessel, slow, ordinary, nothing special. But Han knew that was just another lie they were telling the aliens. "Soo-jung's team has been copying everything," Lee continued. "Trade records, security codes, station blueprints, alien personnel files. When we leave, we're taking more than just our people." Thousands of light years away, Captain Yoon Soo-jung was walking through the corridors of the Proxima trade hub. Around her, aliens of dozens of species went about their business, completely unaware that their galaxy was about to change forever. Yoon was a small woman with quick eyes and steady hands. She had served on trading ships for 15 years, and the aliens barely noticed her anymore. That was exactly how she liked it. Her team was spread throughout the station, each one carrying out their part of the evacuation. But they weren't just packing bags and buying ship tickets. Hidden scanners were copying every database they could access. Micro cameras were recording security procedures. Listening devices were capturing conversations between alien merchants and officials. "Package 17 is secure," Yoon said quietly into her communicator. To anyone listening, it sounded like she was talking about cargo. Actually, she was confirming that another group of human families had been safely loaded onto one of the evacuation ships. But the aliens weren't paying attention to the humans leaving. Why would they? Everyone knew humans were weak, primitive, barely capable of maintaining their own technology. The great species of the galaxy had more important things to worry about than a few thousand mammals packing up their belongings. That blindness was going to cost them everything. Back on Earth, President Han was reading reports from human colonies across the galaxy. Governor Jang Tae-hyun on New Jeju confirms that radio silence protocol is ready to implement, she announced to the room. All colonies are prepared, Admiral Lee confirmed. When you give the word, every human world will go completely dark. No communications, no trade signals, no scientific exchanges. From the aliens' perspective, humanity will simply vanish. Dr. Kim brought up another display. We've also prepared some surprises for any alien ships that try to investigate human space. Automated defense platforms that they can't detect until it's too late. Sensor networks that will tell us exactly who's coming and when. Minefield patterns that will make them think twice about uninvited visits. The room fell quiet as everyone considered what they were about to do. For 3 years, humanity had tried to find a peaceful place in the galactic community. They had offered friendship, cooperation, shared knowledge, and mutual respect. In return, they had received scorn, restrictions, and finally, the demand that they surrender their freedom forever. "Madam President," said Dr. Choi, "Apollo calculates that the aliens will not take humanity's withdrawal seriously for at least 6 months. They expect us to come crawling back, begging for mercy." "They don't understand us at all, do they?" Han said softly. "No, ma'am. They don't. They think diplomacy was our strength. They believe we're weak because we preferred talking to fighting. They have no idea that we've spent this entire time learning everything about them while revealing nothing about ourselves." Admiral Lee stood up. "With your permission, Madam President, I'd like to begin the final phase of evacuations. In 72 hours, every human will be out of alien space. And then we show them what happens when you back a predator into a corner." President Han looked around the room one more time. These people had worked for years to avoid this moment. They had tried everything possible to find peace with the alien races, but the aliens had made their choice, and now humanity would make theirs. "Begin Operation Silent Exodus," she ordered, "and may God help us all." Across the galaxy, the message went out through hidden communication networks that the aliens had never discovered. Human colonies, trading posts, research stations, and diplomatic missions all received the same coded signal. "Come home." Within hours, human ships began disappearing from alien ports and space lanes. Families packed their belongings and left worlds they had called home for decades. Scientists erased their research and closed down laboratories. Traders sold their cargo for whatever they could get and bought passage on the next ship heading toward human space. The exodus was so quiet, so organized, that most aliens didn't notice it was happening. They were too busy celebrating their victory over the primitive mammals to pay attention to where those 6 months had passed since humanity withdrew from the Galactic Council. The alien leaders had expected the humans to return within weeks, begging for mercy and accepting whatever terms they were offered. Instead, something much stranger was happening across the galaxy. Captain Vextool of the Velkari trade vessel. Silver Dawn was the first to report it. His ship was carrying precious metals from the outer rim worlds to the core systems when it simply vanished near the edge of what used to be human space. One moment he was sending regular status reports, the next moment there was only silence. The Velkari Command Center tried to contact the Silver Dawn for 3 days before giving up. Ships disappeared sometimes. Space was dangerous and pirates still roamed the outer regions. But when it happened again the next week, and then again the week after that, patterns began to emerge. In the gleaming towers of the Azurian Collective, Silthara reviewed the reports with growing concern. Her crystal body pulsed with nervous energy as she read about their science vessels disappearing near human territory. The Crystal Song had been investigating strange energy readings at the border of the Sol system. The Harmony's voice had been conducting routine stellar surveys in a nearby nebula. Both ships had stopped transmitting without warning. Perhaps they encountered some natural phenomenon, suggested one of her subordinates, a younger Azurian whose crystal form was still cloudy with inexperience. Natural phenomena do not selectively target ships approaching human space, Silthara replied coldly. Something is hunting our vessels. Meanwhile, in the hive worlds of the Zephyrites, hive mind Kex was experiencing something it had never felt before: fear. The collective consciousness that connected billions of insect beings was designed to share all information instantly. When one of their scout fleets approached human territory, the entire species should have known what happened to it. Instead, there was nothing. The scouts had simply ceased to exist. No death screams, no final messages, no psychic echoes of destruction. It was as if they had been erased from reality itself. Deep in human space, Admiral Lee Kyung-min stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Soul's Pride. The ship looked nothing like the crude vessels humanity had shown the aliens during their years of diplomacy. Instead of thick armor and simple weapons, it was sleek and deadly, its hull covered with advanced materials that bent light around it like water. "Another contact, Admiral," reported Lieutenant Nam Gi-hun from his position at the sensor station. "Velkari battlecruiser, approaching the outer marker." Lee nodded calmly. "Commander Oh-da-un, you have permission to engage." "Understood, sir," came the reply from the pilot of Shadow Squadron's lead fighter. O's ship was invisible to the Velkari sensors, a ghost that could strike without warning. The alien captain never knew what hit him. One moment his ship was cruising confidently toward the human border, the next it was drifting debris scattered across several million kilometers of space. The attack had lasted less than 10 seconds. "Target eliminated," O reported. "No survivors, no distress signals transmitted." This was how humanity fought now, not with the massive fleet battles that aliens expected, but with precision strikes that left no trace, no evidence, no clues about what had really happened. To the galaxy at large, ships were simply disappearing near human space, but the real revolution was happening in the research stations hidden throughout the Sol system. Dr. Kim Hye-jin stood in the main laboratory of the Titan facility, surrounded by technology that would have seemed like magic to the aliens who had dismissed humanity as primitive. "The neural link system is performing beyond expectations," she reported to the holographic image of President Han Soo-jin. "Our pilots can now interface directly with their ship's computers. Their reaction times are faster than any organic brain should be capable of." On the laboratory tables around her, prototypes of impossible devices hummed with barely contained energy. Weapons that could phase through solid matter to strike at a target's core. Shields that absorbed incoming attacks and converted them to power. Engines that could fold space itself, allowing ships to appear anywhere in the galaxy instantly. "What about the plasma web defense system?" Han asked. "Fully operational," Kim replied. "We tested it against simulated alien missile barrages. A single web generator can neutralize attacks from an entire battle fleet. These weren't just improvements on existing technology. They were completely new sciences that humanity had developed while the aliens thought they were playing with primitive rockets and kinetic weapons. Dr. Choi Min-ho's Apollo system was the crown jewel of human innovation. The quantum intelligence didn't just process information. It understood it, learned from it, and used it to predict enemy behavior with terrifying accuracy. Apollo has analyzed every alien species' combat patterns. Choi explained to the assembled military commanders. The Valkyrie rely on overwhelming firepower but have poor coordination between ships. The Azurians use elegant formation flying but can't adapt quickly to unexpected tactics. The Zephirites fight as a swarm, but their hive mind creates predictable responses. The AI had done more than just study alien weaknesses. It had learned to exploit them. When Valkyrie ships approached human space, Apollo knew exactly where they would be and when. When Azurian scouts tried to investigate, the computer predicted their search patterns and had ambushes waiting. When Zephirite swarms came looking for answers, they found only carefully prepared traps. But humanity wasn't just playing defense. Captain Yoon Soo-jung was leading missions deep into alien territory, using the intelligence gathered during the evacuation to strike at targets the aliens thought were completely secure. Her ship, the Ghost Runner, materialized inside a Valkyrie supply depot like a shadow becoming solid. The alien guards barely had time to register the intrusion before they were unconscious, taken down by non-lethal weapons that left no permanent damage. "Cargo bay secured," reported her second-in-command as they loaded crates of rare elements onto their ship. "Medical supplies, quantum processors, and, interesting, looks like they've been stockpiling weapons." "Document everything," Yoon ordered. "Command will want to know what they're planning." The raid lasted exactly 12 minutes. When the Valkyrie guards woke up, they found their depot cleaned out and no trace of who had done it. The security recordings showed nothing but empty corridors. It was as if the supplies had simply vanished on their own. Similar operations were happening throughout alien space. Human strike teams appeared without warning, took what they needed, and disappeared before anyone could respond. Sometimes they targeted military installations, sometimes research facilities, sometimes just valuable cargo shipments. The pattern was always the same: no violence unless absolutely necessary, no permanent harm to alien personnel, and no evidence left behind. The humans took what served their purposes and melted back into the darkness between stars. In the Galactic Council chambers, panic was beginning to replace arrogance. Counselor Thexvar stood before his fellow delegates, his silver skin pale, with worry. "The situation is escalating beyond our control," he admitted. "We've lost over 200 ships in the past month. Trade routes are being disrupted. Our own people are beginning to fear traveling near human space." "Perhaps," suggested the elderly Morthex of the Centaurian Republic, "we should reconsider our position. The humans asked for nothing but peaceful coexistence." "Impossible!" Thexvar's voice cracked like a whip. "We are the dominant species of this galaxy. We do not negotiate with vermin, no matter how cleverly they hide in the shadows." Silthara's crystal form chimed with uncertainty. "But what if these aren't the same humans we remember? What if their withdrawal was not retreat but preparation?" "Preparation for what?" demanded Hive Mind Kex. "They are mammals, soft creatures with short lives and limited intelligence. What could they possibly prepare that would threaten the combined might of the galactic powers?" The answer came sooner than they expected. Fleet Admiral Vexathari was commanding a patrol group near the human border when his sensors detected something impossible. A single human ship was approaching their position, making no attempt to hide or run away. "Orders, sir?" asked his tactical officer. "Destroy it," Vexathari commanded. "It's time to send a message to these terrorists." But when his battle group opened fire, their weapons passed through the human ship as if it wasn't there. Energy beams, missiles, plasma charges, nothing touched the enemy vessel. "What kind of trickery is this?" Vexathari demanded. His answer came in the form of return fire. The human ship's weapons didn't look like much, simple energy beams that seemed almost primitive. But when they struck his flagship, they cut through its shields and armor like they were made of paper. One by one, his ships began to explode. Not the spectacular detonations of normal space combat, but precise surgical strikes that targeted critical systems. The human ship moved between his vessels like a dancer, untouchable and deadly. In less than 5 minutes, Vexathari's entire battle group was destroyed. Only his command ship remained, drifting powerless in space. A communication signal reached his bridge. The image that appeared on his screen was of a human woman in a military uniform he didn't recognize. Her eyes were cold as winter stars. I'm Admiral Oda-un of the Terran Defense Force," she said. "Your fleet." The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike anything in the organization's 1,000-year history. Representatives from 12 major species had gathered in less than 24 hours, their usual ceremony and protocol abandoned in favor of urgent action. The chamber that had once echoed with arrogant laughter now buzzed with fear and confusion. Fleet Admiral Vexathari stood at the center podium, his usually perfect uniform torn and stained from his escape from human space. His report had shaken every military commander in the galaxy. "The human vessel was unlike anything in our databases," he explained to the assembled delegates. "Our weapons passed through it as if it were made of light, but its attacks penetrated our strongest shields effortlessly. In 5 minutes, it destroyed 7 battle cruisers and a command carrier." Counselor Thexvar leaned forward in his high seat. "You're telling us that a single human ship defeated an entire battle group?" "Not defeated," Vexathari corrected grimly. "Eliminated. If the human commander had wanted me dead, I would be floating in space right now. She let me live to carry this message." The chamber erupted in alien voices, raised in disbelief, anger, and growing panic. Species that had dominated the galaxy for millennia suddenly faced the possibility that their supremacy might be ending. Silthara's crystal form pulsed with nervous energy. "How is this possible? Our intelligence reports showed human technology to be centuries behind our own." "Our intelligence reports were wrong," Vexathari replied. "Everything we thought we knew about human capabilities was a lie. While we were busy congratulating ourselves on our superiority, they were developing weapons and systems that make our finest technology look like children's toys." Hive-mind Kex's wings buzzed angrily. "Then we crush them before they become a greater threat. The combined fleets of the galactic powers can destroy any single species." "That's exactly what we're going to do," Thexvar declared, standing up to his full imposing height. "I call for the immediate formation of the Grand Alliance fleet. Every major species will contribute ships and personnel. We will end the human threat once and for all." The vote was swift and unanimous. For the first time in galactic history, all 12 major powers agreed to combine their military forces against a single enemy. Over 10,000 ships would participate, the largest fleet ever assembled. Back on Earth, President Han Soo-jin received the intelligence reports from Apollo with a mixture of sadness and determination. She had hoped it wouldn't come to this, but humanity had learned long ago to prepare for the worst-case scenario. "They're calling it the Grand Alliance Fleet," reported Dr. Choi Min-ho from his position at the Quantum Intelligence Console. "Apollo estimates 10,200 vessels, with crews totaling over 3 million alien personnel." "And our response?" Han asked. Admiral Lee Kyung-min stepped forward. Operation Thunderstrike is ready to deploy. 200 ships of the Terra Defense Force, fully equipped with our latest technology. The numbers seemed impossible. 10,000 alien ships against 200 human vessels. But Han knew that the real battle wouldn't be decided by numbers alone. What does Apollo predict? 97% probability of human victory with minimal losses, Choi answered. The alien fleet is large, but it's composed of 12 different species with incompatible technologies and conflicting command structures. They've never fought together before, and their communication systems can't interface properly. While we, added Dr. Kim Hyejin, have spent the past 6 months designing every system to work in perfect harmony. Our ships don't just fight together. They think together. The human fleet began assembling in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. To alien observers, they would have looked like dark shapes against the star field, sleek vessels that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Captain Shin Wu Jin stood on the bridge of the carrier Incheon Guardian, watching as his ship's fighter bays prepared for launch. Unlike the clumsy human fighters the aliens had seen before, these new craft were controlled by advanced AI systems that could learn and adapt during combat. Fighter Wings Alpha through Delta report ready for deployment, his tactical officer announced. Launch when ready, Shin ordered. Remember, these aren't just fighters. They're learning machines. Every enemy tactic they encounter makes them smarter. Hundreds of sleek fighters poured out of the carrier's bays, their movements so perfectly coordinated that they looked like flocks of mechanical birds. Each fighter was connected to Apollo's network, sharing information instantaneously with every other human unit in the fleet. Commander Bae So Young commanded the Stealth Destroyer Division from her flagship Shadow's Edge. Her ships were invisible to alien sensors, phantoms that could appear anywhere on the battlefield without warning. Stealth field generators at full power, reported her engineering officer. The alien fleet won't see us coming until it's too late. Good, Bae replied, studying the tactical displays showing the approaching alien armada. Target their command ships first. Cut off the head, and the body dies. The alien fleet was indeed massive, a collection of vessels representing the finest military technology 12 different species had developed over thousands of years. Valkyrie battle cruisers with their heavy armor and overwhelming firepower. Azurian lightships that moved like dancers through space. Zephyrite swarm carriers that could deploy millions of fighter drones. But they had never fought as one unified force. Their communication systems used different frequencies and protocols. Their tactical doctrines had been developed for fighting each other, not cooperating against a common enemy. Their command structure was a nightmare of competing egos and conflicting orders. Fleet Admiral Vexathari had been given overall command. But half his subordinates refused to take orders from someone outside their own species. The Valkyrie wanted to charge straight at the human fleet. The Azurians preferred elegant flanking maneuvers. The Zephyrite insisted on swarming tactics that would interfere with everyone else's battle plans. Sensors detect the human fleet, reported the alien tactical officer. 200 vessels moving to intercept. Vexathari studied the readings with confusion. Only 200 ships? Are you certain that's their entire fleet? Confirmed, sir. The humans appear to be severely outnumbered. Then why are they approaching us instead of running away? Vexathari muttered. Something about this situation felt wrong, but he couldn't identify what. The two fleets met in the asteroid field, a region of space that would soon become legendary in both human and alien history. As the aliens closed to weapons range, they began to understand just how badly they had underestimated their enemy. The human ships moved with impossible precision, each vessel's actions perfectly coordinated with every other unit in the fleet. When they opened fire, their weapons struck with surgical accuracy, targeting the exact points where alien shields were weakest. Captain Shin's fighter wings swept through the alien formation like a storm of destruction. The AI-controlled craft learned from every enemy attack, adapting their tactics faster than organic minds could follow. Velkari interceptors that had dominated battlefields for centuries found themselves outmaneuvered by machines that predicted their every move. Commander Bay's stealth destroyers materialized behind the alien command ships, their weapons already charged and targeted. In the first 30 seconds of battle, 4 alien fleet commanders died before they even knew they were under attack. But the real shock came when Admiral Lee Kyung-min deployed humanity's secret weapon, the Neural Link Combat System. Human pilots throughout the fleet suddenly moved beyond the normal limits of organic reaction time. Connected directly to their ship's computers, they could process information and respond to threats faster than any alien species had ever imagined possible. Lieutenant Nam Gi-hoon's fighter danced between enemy fire that should have been impossible to avoid. His neural interface let him feel his ship's movements as if they were his own body, turning the craft into an extension of his will. "This is incredible," he reported over the communication network. "I can see everything, predict everything. It's like the enemy ships are moving in slow motion." That sensation was shared by every human pilot in the fleet. Enhanced by their neural links and supported by Apollo's quantum intelligence, they fought with a coordination and effectiveness that alien military theorists had declared mathematically impossible. The alien fleet began to disintegrate. Ships that had survived hundreds of battles were reduced to debris in minutes. The careful formations that had taken years to perfect collapsed under the assault of enemies who seemed to know exactly where to strike. "Impossible!" Vexathari screamed as his flagship shuddered under human fire. "No species can fight like this!" But even as his fleet died around him, the worst revelation was yet to come. The human ships weren't just winning, they weren't taking any damage at all. Dr. Kim Hyejin's plasma web defense system absorbed every alien attack, converting the incoming energy to power the human weapons. The more the aliens fired, the stronger the human ships became. "Their weapons are feeding our shields," reported the tactical officer on Admiral Lee's flagship. "Every enemy attack makes us more powerful." Lee nodded grimly. This wasn't a battle. It was a demonstration. Humanity was showing the galaxy exactly what happened when a species thaw. The aftermath of the Grand Alliance fleet's destruction sent shockwaves through every corner of the galaxy. In the space of a single day, the military power that had dominated civilized space for millennia had been completely shattered by a species most aliens had considered barely worth notice. On the Azurian homeworld of Crystal Song, Silthera stood in her meditation chamber, her crystalline body dim with despair. Around her, the harmonic frequencies that had once brought peace to her people now sounded discordant and broken. The reports coming in from their surviving ships painted a picture that her mind struggled to accept. "How many?" she asked her aide, though she dreaded the answer. "Of our contribution to the Alliance fleet, 17 ships returned out of 2,000, the younger Azurian replied, his crystal form flickering with grief. "Most are severely damaged. The crews speak of humans, who moved like ghosts, weapons that turned our own attacks against us." Silthara closed her multiple eyes. The Azurian collective had existed for over 5,000 years, during which they had never lost a major military engagement. Their elegant ships and precise tactics had been the envy of the galaxy. Now they were reduced to hiding behind energy barriers, too afraid to venture beyond their own star system. The situation was even worse in Velkari space. The empire that had once stretched across 3 spiral arms was collapsing into civil war as different factions blamed each other for the disaster. Thexvar himself had disappeared. Some said fled to the Outer Rim, others claimed he had taken his own life rather than face the shame of defeat. But perhaps the most shocking response came from the Zephyrite hive worlds. For the first time in their species' history, the collective consciousness had fragmented. Different hive clusters were making independent decisions, unable to achieve the unity that had once been their greatest strength. The defeat broke something fundamental in their shared mind, Dr. Choi Min-ho explained to President Han Soo-jin during their regular briefing. Apollo's analysis suggests they may never function as a unified species again. Han nodded solemnly. She had never wanted to destroy entire civilizations, but the aliens had left humanity with no choice. What's our current status across the galaxy? Mixed reactions, reported Admiral Lee Kyung-min. About 60% of alien species are maintaining total communication blackout with us. They're too terrified to make contact. Another 30% are actively hostile but afraid to attack. And 10%, he paused, consulting his data tablet. 10% are trying to surrender. That last category was the most interesting development. Species that had supported the human containment protocol were now sending desperate messages to Earth, begging for mercy and offering anything humanity might want in exchange for protection. Captain Yoon Soo-jung was experiencing this firsthand as she led the first post-war humanitarian mission to the Kepler system. The local government, a small reptilian species called the Saurians, had sent 17 separate messages pleading for human assistance. Their sun is experiencing unusual solar flare activity, Yoon explained to her crew as their ship approached. The system. Without advanced shielding technology, their entire civilization could be wiped out within the year. Her second-in-command, Lieutenant Park Min-jung, looked puzzled. Why are we helping them? They voted for the containment protocol. Because, Yoon replied, this is what makes us different from the species that tried to cage us. They would have watched us die and called it justice. We're going to save them and call it mercy. The Ghost Runner had been retrofitted for humanitarian work. Its weapon systems replaced with medical equipment, environmental processors, and shield generators powerful enough to protect an entire planet. When it arrived in the Saurian system, the local population could barely believe what they were seeing. Human vessel, came the trembling voice of the Saurian planetary governor. We do not understand. Why do you offer aid to those who wronged you? Yoon's response was broadcast not just to the Saurians, but to listening posts throughout that sector of space. Because someone has to break the cycle of hatred that has poisoned this galaxy for too long. Humanity chooses to be better than our enemies. The shield generators deployed by her team created a protective barrier around the Saurian homeworld that would last for decades. The medical teams treated radiation poisoning that the local doctors couldn't cure. The engineers installed technology that would allow the planet to survive even if their sun became completely unstable. All of this was done freely, with no payment requested and no political conditions attached. Similar scenes were playing out across the galaxy as human ships appeared wherever there was suffering or disaster. When the Voltaren colonies faced famine due to crop failures, human agricultural specialists arrived with new growing techniques and supplies. When a plague swept through the Mindaran systems, human medical teams provided treatments that local science couldn't develop. Governor Jang Tai-hyun now serving as Director of Humanitarian Operations, coordinated these efforts from his headquarters on New Jeju. His office walls were covered with star charts showing ongoing relief missions across dozens of star systems. "The psychological effect is exactly what we hoped for," he reported during the weekly cabinet meeting. "The species that feared us are beginning to see us as protectors instead of conquerors. Public opinion is shifting dramatically in our favor." But not everyone was ready to accept humanity's new role in galactic affairs. Agent Park Min-jung, working with the Expanded Intelligence Network, brought disturbing reports to the leadership. "The hardline factions are regrouping," she warned President Han. "HFY didn't disappear. He's been building a coalition of species that refuse to accept human dominance. They're calling themselves the True Galactic Order, and they're planning something." Han studied the intelligence reports with concern. "How many ships do they have?" "Fewer than before, but they're being more careful this time. They're studying our battle tactics, trying to develop countermeasures, and they're recruiting from species we haven't encountered yet. Civilizations from the outer rim that weren't part of the original Alliance fleet." Admiral Lee reviewed the tactical assessments. "Apollo calculates they could assemble perhaps 3,000 ships, possibly more, if they convince some of the neutral species to join them. And our response?" "We continue with the current strategy," Lee replied. "We offer protection to those who want it, we provide aid to those who need it, and we prepare for war with those who insist on fighting." The open-door protocol that Governor Ao Zhang had established was proving remarkably effective. Species that acknowledged human sovereignty and agreed to treat humanity as equals found themselves welcomed into a new kind of galactic community. Trade agreements were fair and mutually beneficial. Technology sharing flowed in both directions. Conflicts were resolved through negotiation rather than force. The Centaurian Republic, led by the wise elder Morthex, was among the first to formally request alliance status. "We have watched humanity's actions for the past year," Morthex declared in his message to Earth. "Your species has shown that strength and compassion can coexist. The Centaurian Republic would be honored to stand with humanity in building a better galaxy." Other species followed. The peaceful Etherian communes, who had always opposed the militant policies of the old Galactic Council, brought their advanced energy technologies. The aquatic deepwellers contributed their expertise in underwater cities and life support systems. The silicon-based Crystallians offered their knowledge of quantum computing. Dr. Kim Hye-jin found herself coordinating the largest scientific collaboration in galactic history. "We're making breakthroughs every day," she reported excitedly. "The Etherian energy systems combined with our plasma web technology could revolutionize space travel. The deepweller life support tech might let us colonize water worlds we never could before." "And the military applications?" asked Admiral Lee. "Even more impressive. But here's the interesting part. Most of our new allies are asking us to help them develop defensive systems, not weapons. They want to protect their worlds, not conquer others." This was the fundamental difference between the old galactic order and humanity's vision for the future. The previous system had been built on dominance and submission, with the strong ruling the weak through force and intimidation. Humanity offered something revolutionary, a community of equals working together for mutual benefit. But the forces of the old order weren't ready to give up without a fight. In a hidden base in the outer rim, HFY stood before a gathering of alien military commanders representing dozens of species. His silver skin had lost its shine, and his black eyes burned with hatred. "The mammals think they have won," he declared to his assembled followers. "They believe their superior technology makes them invincible, but they have forgotten something crucial. They are still outnumbered 1,000 to 1. The plan he outlined was both desperate and clever. Since they couldn't match human technology, they would overwhelm it with sheer numbers. Every species in the true galactic order would contribute not just their military ships, but their civilian vessels as well. Cargo haulers, passenger liners, research vessels, even private yachts would be armed with whatever weapons they could carry. We will come at them. 1 year after humanity's dramatic withdrawal from the Galactic Council, Ambassador Kang Dae-ho once again walked through the great doors of the Galactic Assembly Chamber. But this time, everything was different. The chamber itself had been rebuilt. Where once there had been towering seats arranged in circles of dominance and submission, now there were comfortable meeting areas where different species could interact as equals. The harsh lighting had been replaced with a warm glow that was comfortable for dozens of different types of eyes. The air itself had been adjusted to accommodate the breathing needs of every species present. Dae-ho was no longer alone. Behind him walked representatives from nearly 30 species that had chosen to join what was now called the Terran Alliance. Elder Morthex of the Centaurians walked beside him, his ancient wisdom a stark contrast to the fear that had once dominated these halls. The Etherian delegate floated in her energy containment suit, ready to share her people's advanced technologies. Even some former enemies like the reformed Saurian Republic had sent ambassadors to this historic gathering. The old Galactic Council was dead. Most of its former members were either hiding in their home systems or desperately trying to rebuild their shattered civilizations. The Velkari Empire had completely collapsed, its worlds now independent systems trying to establish new governments. The Azurian collective remained sealed behind their energy barriers, too traumatized to interact with the outside galaxy. The Zephyrite swarms were still fragmented, different hive clusters making separate peace overtures to humanity. But Thexvar and his true galactic order had not given up. Even as this new assembly convened, intelligence reports indicated they were preparing for one final, massive assault on human space and their allies. President Han Soo-jin had decided to let them come. Madam President, Dr. Choi Min-ho had asked during the final strategy meeting, "Are you certain about this approach? Apollo calculates their force could number over 50,000 vessels." "And how many of those are actual military ships?" Han had replied. "Perhaps 10%. The rest are civilian vessels with improvised weapons and minimal armor." "Then they're sending their own people to die in desperation, hoping to overwhelm us with their corpses." Han's voice had been cold with disgust. "It's time to show the galaxy that there's a better way to solve our differences." Now, as Dae-ho took his place at the speaker's podium in the rebuilt chamber, he could see the future of galactic civilization taking shape. Species that had been enemies for millennia were working together on joint research projects. Trade flowed freely between worlds that had once been separated by military blockades. Children of different species played together in the stations. Recreational areas, learning each other's languages and customs. "Honored delegates," Dae-ho began, his voice carrying easily through the chamber's improved acoustics. "We gathered today not as conquerors and conquered, but as partners in building something the galaxy has never seen before. A true community of equals." The response was dramatically different from his last appearance in this chamber. Instead of mocking laughter and dismissive comments, there was respectful attention and genuine interest. The old Galactic Council was built on the principle that some species were superior to others. Dae-ho continued. The strong ruled the weak, the advanced dominated the primitive, the many crushed the few. That system brought nothing but conflict, suffering, and stagnation to our galaxy. On the chamber's display screens, images appeared showing the fruits of the new cooperation. Joint research stations where human scientists worked alongside alien colleagues. Trade convoys protected by ships from multiple species. Colony worlds, where different races lived side by side in harmony. The Terran Alliance offers a different vision, Daiho declared. We believe that every species has something valuable to contribute. We believe that diversity makes us stronger, not weaker. We believe that the measure of a civilization is not how much it can conquer, but how much it can protect. But even as he spoke these words of hope and cooperation, Apollo was tracking the movements of Thexvar's desperate armada as it approached from the outer rim. 53,000 ships of every description, from military dreadnoughts to converted. Garbage haulers, all carrying weapons and crews ready to die rather than accept humanity's vision for the galaxy. Admiral Lee Kyung-min was coordinating the defense from his flagship, now supported by ships from a dozen allied species. The human vessels were still the most advanced, but they were no longer alone. Centaurian cruisers with their elegant weapon systems, Etherian energy ships that could phase in and out of normal space, and deep-weller submarines that could operate in both space and the liquid cores of gas giant planets. "Admiral," reported Captain Shin Woo-jin from the carrier Incheon Guardian, "enemy fleet is approaching the outer defense perimeter. They're not maintaining any formation. It's just a massive swarm heading straight for us." "Acknowledged," Lee replied. "All ships implement strategy compassion." It was a battle plan that no military force in galactic history had ever attempted. Instead of meeting the enemy fleet with maximum force, the Terran Alliance ships would target only the weapon systems and engines of the attacking vessels, leaving the crews alive and unharmed. "We're going to disable them," Lee had explained to his commanders during the planning session. "Not destroy them. These aren't soldiers fighting for a cause they believe in. They're desperate people following leaders who have filled their minds with hatred and fear. When we show them mercy instead of annihilation, we'll break the cycle of revenge that has poisoned this galaxy." The battle that followed was unlike anything in recorded history. Thexvar's massive swarm crashed against the Alliance defense lines like a tsunami of metal and hatred. But instead of the mutual destruction that everyone expected, something miraculous happened. Commander Bae So-young's stealth destroyers appeared throughout the enemy formation, their precision weapons disabling ship after ship without causing significant casualties. Captain Yoon Soo-jung's humanitarian vessels followed immediately behind, offering medical aid and rescue services to the crews of disabled enemy ships. "This is Captain Yoon of the Terran vessel Mercy's Hand," she broadcast, "on all frequencies. We are here to provide assistance to any crew in distress. We have medical facilities, food, and safe passage to any destination you choose." The psychological effect was devastating to enemy morale. Alien crews who had expected to die gloriously in battle against the human monsters instead found themselves rescued by the same people they had come to kill. Ship after ship surrendered rather than continue fighting an enemy that refused to hate them back. But the real turning point came when Thexvar himself, commanding the last functional dreadnought in his fleet, found his ship surrounded by human vessels. Instead of destroying him, they simply waited. Admiral Oh Da-eun, now commanding the elite Shadow Squadron, opened a communication channel to the trapped Velkari leader. "Counselor Thexvar, this is Admiral O of the Terran Defense Force. Your fleet is defeated and your cause is lost. Will you continue this pointless bloodshed, or will you allow us to break the cycle of hatred that has brought us to this point? Thexvar stared at the human face on his screen, calm, professional, showing no trace of triumph or revenge. Around his ship, human vessels waited patiently for his decision, their weapons powered down despite having every advantage. "Why?" he asked, his voice broken with despair. "Why do you show mercy to those who would have destroyed you?" "Because," O replied, "someone has to be the first to choose a better path." The surrender of Thexvar marked the end of organized resistance to the new galactic order. But more importantly, it marked the beginning of something unprecedented in galactic history: forgiveness on a civilization-wide scale. Back in the rebuilt council chamber, Ambassador Day-Ho was concluding his address to the assembled delegates. "The Terran Alliance is not about human dominance," he said. "It's about mutual respect, shared prosperity, and the belief that every species deserves the chance to reach its full potential." The response was not the scattered applause that might have been expected, but something far more significant: silence. Not the silence of boredom or disrespect, but the silence of beings who were genuinely considering ideas that challenged everything they had believed about how civilizations should interact. Elder Morthex rose slowly from his seat. "Ambassador Day-Ho," he said, his ancient voice carrying the weight of millennia of experience, "the Centaurian Republic has observed the actions of humanity and their allies for over a year now. We have seen strength without cruelty, victory without revenge, and power used in service of protection rather than domination." He paused, looking around the chamber at representatives who had once been enemies. "It is the opinion of the Centaurian Republic that humanity has proven something that many of us believed impossible: that a species can be both powerful enough to defend itself and wise enough not to abuse that power." One by one, other delegates rose to speak. The reformed Saurian Republic, whose world had been saved by human intervention, pledged their support. The Etherian communes offered their energy technologies to help build the infrastructure of peace. Even some of the former neutral species, who had watched from the sidelines for months,